There's nothing to hide. I know there's not, because I've seen what the case is built on. Let everyone see what true evil is.
She thinks it's a solid case at least, and is saying, show everybody what you have so they can see true evil. Within her capacity of chairman and CEO of Turning Point USA, they could be more transparent about what happened that day. People don't like the stuff that they've seen about Mikey McCoy. They don't like what they've seen about Rob McCoy.
Here's what I've come to believe.
It dives into a storm that the internet can't stop replaying. Viewers say new clips and on-screen receipts are raising fresh questions about Erika Kirk's public moves after Charlie's tragedy, while Candace Owens, in her broadcasts, is seen pushing hard for transparency. We're not claiming what really happened. We're examining what people are alleging online. The chatter that's pulling millions into a maze of timelines, texts, and uneasy reactions. Fans are shocked by what they think they see. A calm departure in a chaotic moment, shifting tall stories, and a sudden pivot to leadership speeches that some say feel too soon. Emotions ran high across comment sections, with supporters defending Erika's right to move forward, and critics insisting the case needs daylight, not headlines. Then came the sting. Candace demanding cameras in court and hinting that unanswered questions still hover over the timeline. Again, these are claims and opinions. Nothing here is presented as proven fact. But if the narrative is as tidy as some insist, why does every new clip ignite another wave of doubt? Stay with us as we unpack the on-screen claims, the viral reactions, and the mounting pressure that has the movement, and the family, allegedly divided. The tension began quietly, with whispers spreading through digital corridors before erupting into a full-blown online storm. It started after a late-night clip from Candace's show began circulating across social media.
I've received an unbelievable amount of emails from people that are convinced that Charlie's actually still alive, right? And it's not sad because those people are crazy. They're actually reacting to the lack of emotion and the lack of drive that is coming out of Turning Point USA to figure out who killed him. Yeah, that is how absurd they are acting. Just move on. Just donate to Turning Point USA. This is what Charlie would want.
Social media. In that segment, she questioned not just the timeline of events surrounding Charlie's passing, but also the unusually calm demeanor of those present that day. Viewers were stunned. The clip showed Erika, steady and composed, addressing a crowd about moving forward, while in the background, Candace's voice echoed through countless re-uploads, asking the one question.
Would not have been my advice for Erika in a stage of grieving to go from being the widow to being the CEO and the chairman of the company. If I was running the company, I would have said, let's put in place an interim CEO, right? Someone below, Justin Strife, I think, was the COO. I would have put in an interim CEO and allowed.
Question nobody seemed ready to answer. Why did it all feel so rehearsed? Within hours, hashtags linked to the story were trending. Commenters filled timelines with speculation and heated debates, dissecting every frame of video footage. Some called Candace reckless for even suggesting that something deeper might be hidden, while others praised her for daring to speak what many had been thinking but were too afraid.
Suspicious.
The defense wants to ban cameras in the courtroom. How do you feel about that?
There were cameras all over my husband when he was murdered. There have been cameras all over my friends and family mourning. There have been cameras all over me, analyzing my every move, analyzing my every smile, my every tear. We deserve to have cameras in there. Why not be transparent? There's nothing to hide. I know there's not, because I've seen what the case is built on. Let everyone see what true evil is. This is something that could
to say, the emotional divide was instant. Supporters of Erika defended her, saying she was simply trying to keep her husband's legacy alive and the organization running.
Back down.
The entire issue and the energy right now is that people, irrespective of what's happening on paper, don't believe the story. They don't believe the story. And you are, and of course, this is only a snippet of the interview, so I'm sure more will be said here. But I'm getting that you have seen the case, you think it's a solid case, she thinks it's a solid case at least, and is saying, show everybody what you have so they can see true evil. Within her capacity of chairman and CEO of Turning Point USA, they could be more transparent about what happened that day. People don't like the stuff that they've seen about Mikey McCoy. They don't like what they've seen about Rob McCoy. They don't like the history of Rob and Mikey McCoy and their involvement here. They don't like the video of Terrell. They don't believe what time text messages were sent or when the phone calls took place. You know, Rob McCoy is lying. in the areas that you can control the transparency, I think doing that would be beneficial to Turning Point USA, because I don't think Turning Point USA.
Critics, however, saw her composure as unnatural, claiming it seemed less like grief and more like strategy. The drama reached a fever pitch when Candace released what she referred to as receipts, screenshots, emails, and clipped messages that, according to her, hinted at quiet conversations about brand protection and image management rather than mourning. Again, no one could confirm the authenticity of what she presented, but the effect was undeniable. The internet exploded. Fan pages began comparing timestamps, matching phrases, and piecing together theories like amateur detectives. "It's not proof," one commenter wrote, "but it's enough to make you wonder who's pulling the string." In its community, things were reportedly becoming strained. Former colleagues were said to be choosing sides, some insisting Candace had crossed a line, others believing she was the only one asking the real questions. In private circles, anonymous insiders claimed there was growing frustration about how the narrative was being handled. The push to move on felt forced, they said.
And I'm watching, the minute Charlie was shot, he called me, says, "Dad, Charlie's been shot in the neck. Please call every pastor and pray." It's okay, son. He has wits about him. He's just directing.
Especially when unanswered questions continued to linger. Meanwhile, Erika appeared on stage at a leadership event, speaking about purpose, resilience, and faith in hard times. The applause was loud, but behind the applause there was unease. Her words about turning the page drew both admiration and suspicion. "She looks too composed," a viewer commented online. "Either she's incredibly strong, or something doesn't add up." That sentiment echoed everywhere, from podcasts to comment sections. Candace.
Also, another person who wrote us was telling me the story about Tyler Boyer's involvement in like Maricopa County politics in general. Like, what did he do before in Arizona? And yeah, it's just the kind of stories. He said he approached him several times about embezzlement. You know, Tyler was hooking up with young interns, young male interns, or young male workers. And he didn't even care. He's like, I will go on record because all of this happened. And I had the proof that all of this happened. And everybody knows about Tyler Boyer at Turning Point USA. It's like an absurdity. But this is the person that is putting people into places of power.
Undeterred by backlash, doubled down. She didn't claim to have proof of wrongdoing, but she framed her arguments around transparency, calling for cameras in the upcoming hearings related to the case. "If there's nothing to hide," she said in one viral clip, "then let everyone see what true evil looks like." That line hit hard. Within minutes, it was clipped, captioned, and shared thousands of times. Supporters said she was demanding justice. Detractors accused her of exploiting grief for ratings. Interview 237-255. The emotional weight of it all began to spread beyond politics and into pop culture. Talk shows, podcasts, and even late-night commentary channels picked up the story, turning it into a national talking point. Journalists described it as a tragic saga turned digital soap opera, while influencers began using the hashtag #OrShowTheTruth in solidarity with Candace's demand for transparency. The entire debate had morphed into a morality play. Was Erika a grieving widow unfairly attacked, or a leader protecting something bigger than herself? What fueled the fire even more were the small, eerie details. The footage of Mikey standing behind Charlie during the incident was replayed endlessly. Every gesture, every glance was slowed down and analyzed. He appeared calm. Too calm, according to some viewers. No panic, no visible distress, just a man making a phone call as chaos unfolded behind him. That video became the centerpiece of countless online theories. "Watch his face," one commentator insisted. "It's like he knew something." Others dismissed that interpretation entirely, saying people process trauma differently, and that reading emotion from a few seconds of footage was unfair. But the inconsistencies didn't end there. During a later interview, Erika reportedly claimed she was on the phone with Mikey right after the incident, a statement that contradicted earlier remarks made by Mikey's father, who said he received that call himself. To most, it was a minor detail. To the internet, it was gasoline on an open flame. The confusion reignited the conversation about who really knew what and when. Each contradiction gave fresh life to the idea that not everything was as straightforward as it seemed. Behind the scenes, sources close to the situation said that Turning Point's leadership was exhausted by the scrutiny. The focus, they argued, should be on continuing the mission, not feeding rumors. Yet, every attempt to shift the narrative back to normalcy only made things worse. Silence was read as guilt. Statements were seen as scripted, and every public appearance was picked apart frame by frame. Erika's interviews, though calm and articulate, seemed to divide audiences further. Some called her strength admirable. Others described it as emotionless. Interview 316-4. In the midst of all this, Candace began to share more names. Tyler, a top executive, was suddenly dragged into the storm after alleged messages surfaced hinting at blurred professional boundaries and overseas charity connections that fans found questionable. The overlap between those programs and Erika's Romanian charity became the new obsession of online sleuths. Coincidence or connection became a viral tagline across platforms. Again, none of these claims were verified, but speculation was now driving the entire narrative. The frenzy took on a life of its own. Anonymous accounts began posting long threads claiming insider knowledge about company politics, financial ties, and supposed power struggles. Every post came with screenshots that might have been real or expertly edited. The truth became secondary. The story had become entertainment. Podcasts and commentary channels titled episodes with words like betrayal, cover-up, and receipts drop, feeding the appetite for updates. Every hour brought a new revelation, and fans devoured it all, unable to look away. Candace's tone grew sharper. She started addressing Erika directly on her broadcasts, saying things like, "You can't lead with half the truth, and the public deserves to see everything, not just what looks good on camera." She reminded her viewers repeatedly that these were opinions, not accusations, but the tone was unmistakably confrontational. Meanwhile, Erika kept her responses measured, emphasizing healing and purpose over conflict. Yet, to many, her restraint only made her seem more detached. Friends of the family reportedly tried to mediate, urging both women to de-escalate the feud before it damaged everyone involved. But by then, the story had taken on a rhythm of its own, one driven by clicks, shares, and outrage. Every time Erika appeared at an event, commenters flooded her posts with questions. Every time Candace spoke on her show, a new wave of debate followed. The story refused to fade, and the people caught in it couldn't escape the constant spotlight. Interview 409-510. The first real fracture appeared when a longtime associate of Charlie's quietly stepped forward on a podcast, suggesting that both women were reacting to grief in their own ways and that the public had turned it into a spectacle. His words were calm, but they went largely unheard amid the noise. The internet didn't want calm, it wanted conflict, and with every unanswered question, the tension only deepened. As the weeks rolled on, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a story about one tragedy or one organization anymore. It had become a reflection of how modern audiences consume drama, hungry for the next twist, the next leaked message, the next emotional reaction. And though nobody could say what the truth really was, everyone had already chosen a side. The online atmosphere had shifted from intrigue to full-blown obsession. By now, the feud between Erika and Candace had become one of the most watched ongoing sagas in digital media. People didn't just follow it, they lived in it. Every day new videos, breakdowns, and reaction clips surfaced, dissecting every expression, every gesture, every stray word. It wasn't just about the truth anymore, it was about the spectacle. The audience was addicted to the drama, and the two women at the center of it seemed trapped in a story too big to control. What made it even more surreal was how both sides started mirroring each other in tone. Erika began making carefully framed appearances, her voice calm, but her expressions slightly hardened, as if aware that every blink might be analyzed in slow motion later. "I'm at peace," she said in one interview, "and I trust that time reveals everything." The clip went viral instantly. Fans debated whether that line was a subtle jab at Candace's persistence, or a plea for everyone to let the past rest. Comments flooded in, some praising her composure, others calling her detached. The emotional battlefield was no longer confined to interviews. It had expanded into every corner of social media. 9627 Candace, meanwhile, had doubled down. She told her followers she wasn't waging a personal war but fighting for transparency. "If everything's above board," she said, "why block cameras from the courtroom?" That question echoed across platforms, igniting new waves of speculation. Her tone wasn't accusatory, she insisted. It was accountability. But even as she clarified, the audience interpreted it as a challenge. Memes spread like wildfire, captioned with her quotes and dramatic edits that painted her as a truth warrior, facing off against a powerful institution. Then came the leaked email thread. Anonymous, unverified but instantly viral. It appeared to show internal discussions within Turning Point about managing public perception. referencing phrases like contain the narrative and control the optics. Nobody could confirm its source, but that didn't matter. The damage was done. For online audiences, it was the missing puzzle piece they'd been waiting for. Commentators pounced on it, podcasters spent hours analyzing its wording, and hashtags calling for a full investigation began trending overnight. The impact on Erika was immediate. Insiders claimed she felt betrayed by how quickly support had crumbled. She released a short statement through a publicist, expressing disappointment in the online misinformation spreading like wildfire. Yet, her refusal to directly address Candace's claims only deepened the suspicion. "She's avoiding the hard questions," one influencer said during a live stream. "You can't silence curiosity with polished PR." By midweek, even family members and close friends were caught in the crossfire. People dug through old interviews and public appearances, looking for inconsistencies or body language that might reveal hidden truths. One particularly viral edit compared Erika's earlier emotional tributes with her more recent upbeat tone. The contrast was jarring, and it fueled narratives that she had moved on too quickly. Fans of Candace pointed to this as proof of a larger scheme, while Erika's defenders called it misogynistic and cruel. Both camps grew louder, angrier, and more convinced that the other side was blind. Interview 657, 735. The strangest twist came from an unexpected source. A man who claimed to be a former employee of the organization appeared on a small podcast, alleging that internal discussions about public messaging took place just days after the tragedy. He offered no documents, no verifiable details, but his story spread like wildfire. In hours, his words were clipped, subtitled, and reposted across hundreds of accounts. His hesitant tone and emotional pauses made him sound convincing. "He's shaking because he's telling the truth," a commenter wrote. Others weren't so sure, suggesting it could all be staged for attention. Meanwhile, Candace's camp released a new compilation of videos showing inconsistencies between interviews. She didn't accuse anyone directly, but raised questions about why certain timelines and phone calls kept changing. "Either there's confusion," she said, "or someone's curating the narrative." Her statement sounded calm but hit like an accusation. Within hours, Erika's spokesperson fired back, calling the commentary irresponsible and emotionally exploitative. "People are grieving," the response read, "and turning grief into a guessing game is harmful to everyone involved." Still, the public wasn't done. Every new denial was interpreted as deflection. Every clarification seemed like an edited script. Online investigators began charting timelines on digital whiteboards, cross-referencing public statements with press coverage. One viral TikTok claimed to have cracked the real sequence of events, connecting dots between Tyler's overseas projects and Mikey's calm reaction on video. Again, none of it was verified, but it didn't need to be. The thrill came from believing there was more beneath the surface. As the noise grew louder, Erika's tone started to change. During an emotional speech at a recent event, her voice trembled slightly as she said, "Grief looks different for everyone. Some cry in silence, others fight for meaning." The audience applauded, but the online community dissected it frame by frame. Was she trying to reclaim her narrative, or was she simply tired of fighting? Even Candace paused her commentary for a few days afterward, posting instead about strength, faith, and perseverance. Yet peace didn't last. Another alleged recording surfaced, this time a short voicemail clip, where an unidentified voice mentioned keeping certain details private. Again, no one could confirm its authenticity, but the timing was perfect for fueling another round of speculation. Comment sections filled with wild theories about who the voice belonged to, with everyone from executives to pastors being named without evidence. For days, it dominated trending lists, overshadowing even major headlines. Throughout it all, Charlie's memory was repeatedly invoked but rarely discussed in depth. Fans lamented how his legacy had been consumed by controversy. "They've turned grief into gossip," one user wrote under a viral thread. But even that comment, meant as a critique, became part of the ongoing spectacle, quoted, shared, and repurposed as commentary about the culture of online obsession itself. Behind closed doors, reports suggested that Candace had been warned by legal advisors to tread carefully. Lawsuits, gag orders, and defamation claims were allegedly being prepared. Yet, according to her own statements, she wouldn't be silenced. "If asking questions is a crime," she said on her show, "then we have a much bigger problem than anyone thinks." Her defiance reignited her followers, who hailed her as fearless. At the same time, critics accused her of dragging a grieving family through emotional turmoil. It was at that point the story stopped being about truth and became about loyalty. Supporters of Erika saw her as a woman unfairly targeted while trying to rebuild her life. Fans of Candace saw her as the only one bold enough to challenge the powerful. Every comment, every reaction, every piece of footage became a litmus test for which side you stood on. The entire narrative had transformed into a moral showdown. Faith versus exposure, silence versus confrontation, legacy versus transparency. The growing divide showed no sign of healing. Even within their shared circles, colleagues avoided taking sides publicly, fearing backlash no matter what they said. In whispers, though, people admitted how surreal it had all become. What began as mourning had turned into a digital gladiator match, with fans demanding truth and insiders scrambling to protect reputations. Each new day brought a new leak, a new reaction, a new viral storm. And beneath it all, the original tragedy that started everything was slowly being buried under layers of speculation, denial, and carefully curated emotion. By the third week, the story had become impossible to ignore. Commentators from all corners, political pundits, entertainment bloggers, even lifestyle influencers were now weighing in. The public's appetite for new twists seemed endless. What had started as a disagreement over transparency had spiraled into a cultural spectacle, blurring the line between truth and entertainment. The more the story evolved, the less it seemed to be about facts, and the more it became about perception. In one particularly viral episode of Candace's show, she revisited the footage from that tragic day, looping the same few seconds where Mikey calmly lifted his phone. "I'm not saying this means guilt," she emphasized, "but it certainly doesn't look like panic." That single sentence set off another explosion online. Viewers slowed down the clip, enhanced the audio, even analyzed shadows in the background as if decoding a hidden message. Some claimed they could hear whispers, others said there was nothing but noise. But everyone agreed on one thing: it didn't feel right. Erika's response came just a day later in the form of a pre-recorded message. Sitting in what appeared to be her living room, she spoke softly, thanking supporters and expressing exhaustion over endless online distortions. She didn't mention Candace by name, but her words were unmistakably aimed in that direction. "Speculation doesn't heal anyone," she said. "It just deepens wounds." The message was shared widely, accompanied by captions like, "Finally speaking her truth," and "Too little, too late." Some found it moving. Others found it rehearsed. Then came a curveball nobody saw coming. A major media outlet ran a piece claiming that an internal memo from Turning Point's legal department had been leaked, warning staff not to comment publicly on sensitive matters surrounding the ongoing case. The document's authenticity couldn't be verified, but it added fuel to Candace's argument about lack of transparency. "Why silence your own people?" she asked on air. "If you have nothing to hide?" The question was rhetorical, but it reverberated through social media like an accusation. As expected, Erika's defenders fired back. Prominent voices in the conservative community came to her aid, calling Candace's tone divisive and harmful. "There's no conspiracy here," one longtime associate insisted on a live stream. "Just grief being weaponized for clicks." His words resonated with some, but others felt they were missing the point. The narrative had already moved beyond grief. It was now about credibility, ethics, and the human instinct to question what doesn't make sense. Meanwhile, whispers about Tyler Boyer's alleged misconduct refused to die down. New sources appeared on smaller podcasts, claiming that his overseas charity connections and involvement in early meetings between Charlie and Erika were too coincidental to ignore. Again, no proof was provided, but the rumors grew legs anyway. Audiences began drawing their own lines between the Romanian and Ukrainian projects, suggesting that the similarities in timing hinted at a bigger picture. The story had taken on a life of its own, self-sustaining, unstoppable, and far beyond anyone's control. Even the late-night shows got involved. Comedians joked about the influencer investigation, painting both women as symbols of modern media chaos. One fighting too hard to be heard, the other fighting too hard to stay in control. Audiences laughed, but underneath the humor, a real discomfort lingered. The line between journalism and entertainment had dissolved, and everyone watching could feel it. Candace didn't slow down. She posted what she described as clarifications, voice messages, blurred screenshots, and statements she claimed came from insiders afraid to speak publicly. She never revealed names, always prefacing with allegedly, but the damage each post caused was enormous. The longer the silence from Erika's camp lasted, the more credibility Candace seemed to gain online. Even those who didn't fully trust her began to wonder why Turning Point refused to issue direct answers. Then, a surprise twist hit. An anonymous letter appeared on a private forum, written in a tone that sounded deeply personal. The writer claimed to have worked closely with both Charlie and Erika and suggested that the real story was less sinister and more tragic. A mix of exhaustion, miscommunication, and mismanaged crisis response that spiraled out of control. The post ended with, "Everyone's chasing villains. But what if this was just a series of human mistakes?" For a moment, the narrative shifted. Some readers felt sympathy again, but others dismissed it instantly, calling it another calculated distraction meant to soften Erika's image. Erika herself seemed to sense that sympathy could be fleeting. In her next public appearance, she allowed herself to appear more vulnerable, her eyes glassy as she spoke about faith and loss. "People think strength means silence," she said quietly, "but sometimes silence is just shock." The clips circulated widely, and for the first time in weeks, comment sections were filled with empathy. "Maybe we've been too harsh," one viewer wrote. But as always, that calm didn't last long. Only a few hours later, Candace released another segment teasing that she had more material coming soon that could shift public understanding completely. That single sentence undid all the softness from Erika's speech. Viewers swarmed Candace's comment section begging for a preview, while others accused her of keeping the audience hooked on suspense. The emotional pendulum swung again, from sympathy to suspicion, from empathy to outrage. The cycle was endless. Meanwhile, media analysts began dissecting how the feud had turned into a phenomenon. "This is a textbook case of narrative control," one expert said in an interview. "Each side is building its own truth, and the public is trapped between them." Online, fans didn't care about analysis. They just wanted the next shock. Clips were edited into cinematic recaps with dramatic music, thumbnails reading "Cover-up exposed" or "Truth finally revealed." The entire saga had become serialized content, a digital reality show built on tragedy. Privately, people close to both women were said to be exhausted. "It's not about justice anymore," one anonymous friend confessed to a small podcast. "It's about pride." Yet even that statement was clipped and twisted into another headline. "Insider confirms feud is personal." Nothing could stay contained. Every whisper became a wave. Every rumor became a headline. Then came the unexpected reunion moment that sent shockwaves across the internet. At a faith-based summit, both Erika and Candace appeared in the same room for the first time since the controversy began. Cameras captured their brief interaction, a polite nod, a handshake, and nothing more. But that image spread faster than any of their previous words. Commenters analyzed body language, micro-expressions, even the tension in their shoulders. "She looked like she wanted to say something," one fan wrote, but held it back. Others insisted the moment proved they were trying to reconcile. For a brief moment, it seemed possible that peace might finally settle in. But the audience didn't want peace. They wanted an ending worthy of the chaos they'd been fed. Online speculation intensified yet again, predicting that Candace's next episode would finally expose everything. Erika's silence was interpreted as fear. Supporters of both women began fighting more viciously than ever before, flooding every post, every live stream, every podcast with accusations and counterclaims. The truth no longer mattered. It was the story itself that kept everyone watching. The story of two strong personalities colliding in a world where perception means everything. And with every new headline, the lines between fact and fiction blurred a little more, until even the audience couldn't tell if they were watching a tragedy, a drama, or something far more deliberate. The weeks that followed felt like living inside a storm that refused to pass. Every day, a new thread, a new leak, a new claim seemed to appear, each one contradicting the last. The digital crowd had turned the feud into a living, breathing organism, feeding off emotion, outrage, and curiosity. Even people who had never heard of Erika or Candace before were now invested, picking sides like it was a season finale. The saga had outgrown both women. It wasn't about the truth anymore. It was about who could make their story sound truer. Candace's next broadcast came unannounced. She sat alone, voice steady, but her expression sharper than ever. "They're saying I'm obsessed," she began, "but if asking questions is obsession, then so be it." She didn't raise her voice, but every word carried a weight that pulled the audience in. She played short clips again, old footage, familiar phrases, carefully selected pauses, and then simply asked, "Why do the details keep changing?" Viewers flooded the chat with fire emojis and disbelief. Some said she was courageous. Others called it calculated. But one thing was certain, she knew exactly how to keep her audience glued. Meanwhile, Erika appeared on a popular morning show the next day. She was wearing soft colors, her tone warm, her eyes visibly tired. When the host asked about the ongoing storm, she sighed deeply before answering. "I've learned that silence is sometimes the only dignity you have left." The clip went viral in minutes. Fans called her graceful under fire. Critics said it was manipulation wrapped in humility. The same line that earned her sympathy from one crowd earned suspicion from another. That duality became the defining feature of the whole story. Two women, both charismatic and intelligent, both convinced they were right in their own way, standing on opposite ends of a digital battlefield. And somewhere beneath it all, a man's memory that everyone claimed to honor but few seemed to truly remember. Commentators started asking whether the public had turned grief into a sport. Others argued that this was accountability at work, the uncomfortable process of truth clawing its way to the surface. Behind the scenes, things were unraveling fast. Sources close to Turning Point whispered about quiet meetings, private investigations, and frantic damage control. Staff were told not to engage online, and legal teams were reportedly weighing defamation claims against several content creators who had amplified Candace's segments. Candace, in turn, said that Then came the most unexpected twist of all. Late one night, Erika released a handwritten note on her social media page. It wasn't an official statement, just a scanned letter addressed to those who still care about the truth. Her handwriting was shaky, the tone raw. "I'm tired," it read. "I'm tired of defending grief. I'm tired of strangers deciding how I should feel. I have nothing left to prove." The note ended with a plea for privacy, not for herself, but for the people still mourning Charlie. "Let us breathe again," she wrote. The reaction was instantaneous. Hashtags shifted overnight. "Let her breathe" trended for days. People who had once criticized her began expressing guilt and empathy. Candace herself acknowledged the post in a surprisingly soft tone during her next broadcast. "Maybe we've all said too much," she admitted. "Maybe this has gone further than anyone intended." Her voice cracked slightly on that line, and the chat filled with hearts instead of fire emojis. For the first time in weeks, silence fell across the internet. Not out of boredom, but reflection. But the calm didn't last long. Within days, blogs began publishing new speculation about who leaked the letter in the first place. Some believed Erika had released it herself to regain sympathy. Others thought someone close to her had betrayed her confidence. Screenshots surfaced showing drafts of the note, hinting that it may have been scheduled for release days earlier. Once again, the same plea for peace became ammunition for new theories. Even grief was being commodified. Observers watching from the outside began calling it the tragedy of transparency. Every act of openness, no matter how sincere, was twisted into contempt. Every silence was treated as a confession, and as both women tried to step back, the audience only pulled them deeper into the spectacle. Podcasts debated the psychology of control, articles examined the anatomy of online outrage, and thousands of viewers claimed they just wanted closure. But closure was impossible in a story that never stopped evolving. A few weeks later, both women coincidentally attended the same charity gala, an event honoring community service, not politics. Cameras captured them exchanging a polite greeting. No animosity, no theatrics, just a nod between two people who had once stood on the same side of something much larger than themselves. That single moment of calm, captured from across the room, became the final viral image of the saga. Some said it symbolized forgiveness, others said it was nothing but strategy. Yet for the first time, neither of them responded. No interviews, no statements, no live streams. Just silence. And that silence, for once, wasn't a pause between arguments. It was the end of a noise that had gone on too long. Still, the public couldn't let go completely. Forums filled with posts titled, "Will they ever tell us the full story?" and "Did the truth die with the drama?" But the answer never came. Maybe it never would. All that remained were fragments, soundbites, screenshots, headlines, and a lingering sense that somewhere in the chase for answers, empathy had been lost. In the end, the saga became a mirror, reflecting how easily outrage becomes currency and how grief can be repackaged as entertainment. Candace continued her work, shifting to new topics. Erika withdrew, focusing on quieter projects and private life. Yet, whenever their names trended again, people couldn't resist peeking back into the story, hoping for one last revelation. There wasn't one. What remained was the echo of voices arguing about truth, loyalty, and legacy, a digital ghost that refused to fade. The audience at last began to move on, but not without remembering. The lesson hidden between the headlines. Sometimes, the loudest noise isn't the truth at all. It's just the sound of everyone, talking at once. And that brings us to the biggest question of all. What do you think really happened? Behind all this noise, we've seen the clips, we've heard the statements, we've read the receipts. But the truth still feels buried somewhere beneath the drama. Was this just a public feud gone too far? Or a deeper story that people weren't supposed to see? Some believe Candace is right to keep pushing for answers, while others say Erika deserves peace and the right to move on. We're not here to decide who's guilty or innocent, only to explore the conversation that everyone's been afraid to have. What does transparency really mean when the world is watching? And at what point does the search for truth become entertainment itself? If you've been following this story from the beginning, drop your thoughts below. Do you think there's more to uncover? Or should everyone finally let this go? Tell us what side of the debate you stand on, Team Candace or Team Erika, and why. Make sure to hit that like button if you've been glued to this roller coaster from the start. Subscribe for more deep dives into the biggest internet controversies. And turn on notifications so you don't miss the next twist. Because if this saga has proven anything, it's that even when the cameras stop rolling, the story is never really over. The story is never